Hello, welcome to Tuesday Live. I am Omini Udan. In 3 days, being the 26th of June 2020, the world will observe the International Day Against Drug Abuse and Illicit Trafficking. That came into existence in 1987 by the resolution of the General Assembly of the United Nations. The dangers of drugs is one many countries are faced with, especially its consequences such as mental illness and exposure to vices that also affect human and capital development. The substance often abused include the non-medical use of cough syrups containing codeine and tranquilizers. There are the hard drugs like cocaine and heroin, and cannabis is believed to be the most commonly used drug. The issue of drugs, especially among young persons, has continued to raise concerns with government and relevant bodies in tackling this surge in entrenching a society free of drug abuse. What are the renewed actions in tackling the ills of drug abuse? What are the best practices? What is tackling drug abuse like in the face of COVID-19? Answers and more tonight on Tuesday Live after this background report by Abolade Salami.
Among Nigerians, especially youths, seems to be on the increase, despite statutory measures put in place by the federal government and the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, NDLEA, to stem the indiscriminate use and abuse of drugs. Information gathered from the NDLEA show that more than 14 million Nigerians are engaged in drug abuse using tramadol, cannabis sativa, popularly called India hemp, codeine, heroin, and other illicit drugs. To curtail the trend, NDLEA introduced various means to enlighten the public on the need to stay away from narcotics with a view to reducing the number of more than 14 million Nigerians who abuse drugs. In Lagos State, the command is fighting hard and manning the entry points into the state's market, a step that led to the arrest of over 400 persons in 2019, caught with over 13,616.215 kilograms of hard drugs and conviction of more than 28 culprits.
This command destroyed over 100 tons of drugs, but we are seeking the collaboration and assistance of other relevant stakeholders so that our effort will be comprehensive.
At the airport, the federal government has deployed more sophisticated scanner machines to prevent exportation and importation of illegal substances. This has significantly aided smooth operations.
Then tramadol lately has gone down, but we used to have serious seizures of tramadol through the airport. I know there was a single seizure of almost about 5 tons. I think that year we had, at the end of the year, we had seizures of up to, I think about 6 tons. That's about 6,000 kilograms.
Many are of the opinion that while government is providing needed logistics to control the abuse of drugs, parents must pay close attention to their wards and continually educate them on the dangers associated with drug abuse and its attendant consequences, especially on their future. In Lagos, Abolade Salami.
Drug abuse and illicit drug trafficking is the focus of Tuesday Live tonight. Abolade Salami's report says the tone for the program tonight. And as usual, at some point our phone lines will be open in the course of the program. And we'll get to you. Please turn down the volume of the television set before you make your input to avoid the holdback. Also, you can be part of the conversation tonight through our Twitter handle at Tuesday Live NTA. I have a team of guests tonight. Right here I have Colonel Muhammad Mustafa Abdallah, a lawyer and Chairman, Chief Executive, National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, NDLEA. Thanks for being on the program.
It's my honor, pleasure, and duty to be here.
Okay. Also tonight, Dr. Chinyelu Ada Ikeako, consultant, psychiatrist, and private practitioner.
Having me. Good evening, viewers.
Ibrahim is an advocate and fights drug abuse.
Thank you for having me, and good evening, viewers.
Bene Bassi, security expert and president, African Council on Narcotics, ACON.
Pleasure to be on the program this evening.
Chairman, we are inching into celebrating the World Drug Abuse Day in Nigeria. Can you fill us in? What's the update like in Nigeria?
Let me start by making a little correction. We are not celebrating, we are commemorating.
Okay.
Because drug abuse, as the case is not something that people should be proud of, such that it shouldn't be celebrated. But Nigeria has been a signatory to all of the protocols that deal with drug abuse and psychotropic substances. Nigeria very much is in the forefront in trying to see that every protocol signed is implemented in this country. Not because we are only dutiful members, but for the fact that we have a big population to be concerned about. Drugs are very inimical to the progress of the youth once they have taken into it. In Nigeria, it's alarming to tell the least about the scope and direction that drug abuse is taking. Generally, if you take cannabis sativa for one, as an example, the world average of consumption is 5%. In Nigeria, is 15%. You know what 15% of 200 million people is? That is why the government has decided that it's about time it took a firm stand about the way drug must be tackled, not to talk about the trafficking.
Okay, I love your opening. Now, you've just said 15%, but the global average as at 2016 stood at 5.6% among adults. Now, with what is happening, are you overwhelmed or you're surmounting it?
I wouldn't say we're overwhelmed. I would say that with the tools and manpower that we have been more than equal to the task. We have more than met our match, but we have given as much as we got. That is why Mr. President Muhammad Buhari realized that there is a little bit of retooling that is required in terms of manpower, logistics, and equipment. He has done the first one. That is the addition of manpower. If you just recall that for 27 odd years, Nigeria had been living with a manpower that was set up in total 5,000. Factor in retirements, dismissals, and outright resignation. That brings to about 4,700 or thereabout that you have. So he took a look at it and understood that there was need to augment the manpower of the agency if it must meet its task. That is why he said in phases will grow to a size of about 20,000.
Okay, let's go to Rekpene. Rekpene, I want to take on you before going to Danjuma and Chinyelu, because you are the president of the African Council on Narcotics. Now, looking copiously at the data I have here, they said in the past year alone, about 15% of the adult population in Nigeria, like the chairman has said, about 14.3 million people are involved in considerable level of use of psychoactive drug substance in Nigeria. You are the president of African Council on Narcotics. Comparatively, are you worried?
Every responsible Nigerian should be worried, very, very worried indeed. I just, if you take, for instance, the figure stated by the chairman of the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, 15% of a population of about 205 million Nigerians. It's quite a huge number in terms of individuals and persons who abuse cannabis sativa. But the last time I checked, the 21.8%, which represents about 10.8 8 million Nigerians, aged between age 15 to 64, use all kinds of drugs, other than alcohol and tobacco. So they use narcotic drugs and psychotropic substances. About 7.5% of this, talking about the figure I mentioned earlier was men alone, 21.8%, and about 10.8, representing 10.8 million. For women, about 7.0%, representing about 3.4 million of women of about the same age also use narcotic drugs and psychotropic substances. So I think that's very huge. But again, I'm not sure if these figures are as empirical as they should be, because these are figures based on the National Bureau of Statistics, based on the work they did, survey they did a couple of years back. So we've got every cause to be very, very worried. And if you check it out, almost by the break of each day, you have a new set of younger people taking to substance abuse, joining the drug culture. So it's a menace, and in terms of the consequences that we see on a daily basis, it's a menace. It's a scourge that should disturb every responsible Nigerian.
And fights drug abuse. Can we get your perspective?
What I want to say about this drug issue is we find figures that are now being said by the chairman and the African narcotic boss here. We have serious problems. I have been in the field looking at so many things happening within the society in the north and in the south. This figure, I don't think is updated. If it's updated, it will be far beyond that 14-point-something%. Because now, a lot of our people, politicians and people alike, believe those that their followers cannot do what they want to do or what they want them to do until they are in the influence of these drugs. Parents have lost track of their responsibility. That is, looking after their words and knowing what they are doing. So a lot of children now, between the primary school age and secondary school age, get into this drug abuse. So I believe the issue of 14% or less is not true. It is far beyond that. And that is my belief.
Chinyelu, you are a psychiatrist and a private practitioner, and you have been faced with this. What is the situation like in terms of the inflow and the remedies you have achieved so far?
I think it's really staggering for us to be twice the global average for drug use. I mean, the global average is 5.6%, and we're ranging between 14.3 and 15%, which is over 40 million people using drugs in Nigeria. What we're seeing is more women using drugs. What we're seeing is polyaddiction, where people are abusing 3 or more drugs at the same time. Because drug abuse is a chronic relapsing disease similar to diabetes or hypertension, where you treat and you manage it, you don't actually cure it in most cases. It's really important that we focus on prevention strategies, that we understand the risk factors that predispose an individual to become addicted to drugs, and have a comprehensive plan, a collaborative plan on how to address each and every one of those risk factors. I mean, the NDLEA has done a phenomenal job in terms of burning hundreds and hundreds of metric tons of illicit substances, seizing between 2006 and 2008, 12,000 drug traffickers, over 12,000 drug traffickers. So I think they're doing a phenomenal job. But we really need to reassess whether, demand reduction, strategy is adequate to meet the challenge of reducing drug use, illicit drug use among Nigerians.
If more and more women are involved in it, what would have been responsible?
Well, what happens is that our children are going through periods of transition when they leave home, when they move from JSS to SS, when there's disruption in the family, either through divorce, when there's difficulty socializing. A lot of children use drugs to make them feel more confident. A lot of children use drugs to have a bonding experience with other children of their age because they lack social skills. So we need family support programs, that, reach out to these kids and these parents and families and give them the necessary coping skills to be able to manage these risk factors in children. Early aggression is also a risk factor in children. A lot of people who use drugs are self-medicating because they have an anxiety or a mood disorder, and it's undiagnosed, and they're trying to feel better, when they're not feeling well inside. And so I'm advocating that we have early screening for every Nigerian, just like you have your annual physical health check from your primary care doctor. You also have an annual emotional health check where we're able to pick up these risk factors at an early age, because year in, year out, we're monitoring, every single Nigerian, and that removes the stigma because everybody's doing it. And that way we're able to get it at the level of risk factors, prevent, as well as treat. We need more treatment centers. We need several in each state. A lot of drug users are in the rural areas. They cannot afford, neither is it readily accessible, treatment modalities that they may need in order to treat their addiction.
From the opening we have gotten now, June 26th is the International Day Against Drug Abuse and Illicit Drug Trafficking. What are we going to look at? Because from the opening is quite disturbing, and I know it's not peculiar to Nigeria. So what are we going to look at globally and indeed Nigeria? What will be the focus?
The essence of the date, as far as the UN is concerned, is, like I mentioned, is not to celebrate, but to commemorate, to bring back nations back to reality, that we do have a global problem. Lest you forget, be on track as to what it is you're supposed to have been doing to be on board in the Committee of Nations. Whether you have been able to meet up your quota in terms of steps, whether you meet up in best practices in terms of the drug demand reduction, and whether you understand that the things that you are doing has some function which happens in other parts of the world. So individual countries are supposed to fill in their quotas, so that as a whole world, everybody is moving towards the same goal, which is the reduction of the consumption of substances that affect principally the youth, but not discounting other age groups, like it's been mentioned, up to 64. Okay. All right. You just need to know that is the working age group for every nation. If nations don't get focused to make sure that these particular cohorts have been sensitized to move away from drug taking, economic development will certainly not happen. In Nigeria, we have additional things to contend with. It's not only economic deprivation that we suffer. We have an upsurge in several violent crimes. I bet none of them can happen without the influence of drugs. The main one that comes to mind now is the Boko Haram insurgency. Okay. That's over 7 years going, still not sorted out. I have spoken to some field commanders, and they have confirmed to me that at every camp they have overrun, they have met drug paraphernalia.
Okay.
So what they do is actually under the influence. I have spoken to people from the prisons and the police. Most of the suspects, the prisoners they have one form of drug abuse, one of them.
Okay. Let me throw this question to Rekpene and Danjuma, beginning from Rekpene. If you look at the perspective of fake news, they say fake news happens because someone enables it to happen. Now, the question you ask is, with all what is in place, international cooperation, international collaborations, networking of people to check it, the question you ask, who brings drugs into the country? How does it come?
I think, that's a valid and very good question. Drugs come into the country from different sources. In our case, for instance, we have very huge, very large borders by air, by waterways, by land. And, of course, the drugs come in, through those different borders. Unfortunately also, because of the sheer size, enormity of the borders, it's not impossible to note that in certain areas, the borders are also porous because we probably don't have the wherewithal, to monitor these borders effectively. In the U.S., for example, they have border patrol, a specialized, security agency of government that, executes or carries out border patrol. And even at that, drugs are still smuggled in from Mexico into, places like, San Diego. But we don't even have a thing like that. So you have the vast waterways, through which, persons come into the country, and huge numbers of persons come into this country every day. The institutions of government that check such influx of, of persons from other countries include Immigration Service, Customs, deal with goods, and NDLEA, also supported by, the Nigerian police and other security agencies. But even at that, I do not think that, they have the sufficient structural measures to be able to effectively man this border. So these drugs still get smuggled into this country. And of course, how do they come in? Through individuals, drug barons, and you have international drug cartels. Nigeria, for a while, had been a transshipment corridor where the drugs that are coming from Southeast Asia sometimes get moved to the United States and parts of Europe, and sometimes from the Americas, Brazil, Colombia, and countries of in South America come in, and they also get transshipped out. So basically, that's how the drugs get in, and that would mean that we need to recalibrate our institutions that are responsible for border checks, border control, and monitoring to ensure that they step up with their responsibilities in this regard to prevent the influx. Otherwise, I will tell you that the different international cult groups, and they have tentacles all over the world. The Golden Crescent, KKK, and the rest of all such cults that are involved, Golden Triangle, all of them that are involved in it, have tentacles all over the world, through which they funnel these drugs into Nigeria, unfortunately.
You are the president of the African Council on Narcotics. You talked about they need to recalibrate, right? I quote you rightly. Are you working hand in sync with the NDLEA in Nigeria?
It has a list of non-governmental organizations that they work with. Yeah, in the past we had occasion to at the level of non-governmental activities, get carried along by the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency. African Council on Narcotics also works very closely with the ICPC, amongst one of the several non-governmental organizations that are listed to work with them. As a matter of fact, the need for collaboration, for coordination and cooperation among several agencies, to be able to effectively tackle this cannot be too emphasized. So almost always there is the need and for valves of collaboration to be opened up so that we can work in synergy to be able to effectively tackle this. The drug problem is like crime; it's everybody's problem. So the more individuals or stakeholders can be initiated into this effort to try to effectively tackle it, the better.
After this report from Katsina, I'll take on Danjuma on other perspectives. Let's take a listen.
Abuse, addiction, and trafficking constitute nuisance to any nation, as no society can develop with its inhabitants being engaged in drug addicts, abuse, and trafficking. This is because those that engage in the habits cut across age and gender. They also represent a reasonable percentage of the population. The acts consequently lead to committing crimes such as rape, killing, and other related criminal activities. This applies to Katsina State as youth, both males and females, and even the old, have continued to consume tramadol, codeine syrups, cannabis, and other related dangerous drugs, thereby causing nuisance to the state.
Can see is our youth that are into these drugs, and they say children are the leaders of tomorrow. And these youths, once they are taking drugs, then what type of leaders do you expect will have in future?
However, the state government says it has been taking stringent measures and is recording success in the fight against illicit drug abuse and trafficking in the state.
That can lead to all sorts of crime. So, His Excellency, Right Honorable Aminu Bello Masari, in his own wisdom, established a task force that has to do with that will checkmate the excessive importation or peddling of drug in the states.
Similarly, on its own part, the Katsina State Command of the National Drug and Law Enforcement Agency, NDLEA, says it has since January 2020 apprehended no fewer than 158 suspected drug traffickers and recovered 361.15 kilograms of different portions of assorted hard drugs, convicted 60, counseled 120 persons, and subjected 4 persons to rehabilitation.
The use is if somebody says, try, run. Because if you try, you may never want to give up. And if you are hooked, you are on the path of self-destruction.
Next stop is the report from Enugu, a Vox Pop.
It's the devil's workshop, right? The kind of friends also that people follow. You know, when you have kids, you advise your kids to follow the right sets of friends so that they will not learn all these kind of vices.
Like from January to date, in Enugu, we have arrested a substantial number of people because of this issue of drug. And so we have so many cases in courts ongoing. Drug destroy life, and once somebody's life is destroyed, that is it. Organizations, religious institutions, parents, and the rest, to make sure that they monitor their youth.
And one of the reasons is people use drugs because for them it's a coping strategy. when people are undergoing challenges in life, some of them use drugs.
Well, many youths go into drug abuse. Some go into depression. Some don't meet up with their life expectations. And also, some also lure into it to get agile for them to walk.
Our phone lines are on and our Twitter handle is open. You can send in your tweets now at Tuesday Live NTA. Danjuma, back to you. I recommended scratched some aspect of what we expect to hear. So what's your own perspective looking at basically at collaboration, because you would not say the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency can do all this alone?
They really have to do it in collaboration with other security agencies. But from the extensive work I have done on this drug issue, I find out that even the insurgency, the Boko Haram and the rest of them were fighting now for the past 7 years, some of their funding comes through drugs. If I give you an example of how lucrative it is, you get a carton of tramadol from Lagos at 7 million naira. If you can ferry it to Kano, Sokoto, or any other place around there, you sell it at minimum 16 million. So what kind of business will you do to fetch this kind of money? What these drug barons have and the traffickers cannot, the government or what is given to NDLEA to fight drugs cannot match 1% of what they have in their hands. You have somebody from the interview I listened to one time, the NDLEA chairman said they get about 30 million naira per month to fight drugs in 774 local governments in Nigeria. 774 local governments. I'm sure that 30 million naira can't fuel the vehicles. Not to talk of paying for information, because these drug traffickers can do anything, can pay any amount of money to get their way. And from what the president of the Narcotics Association is saying, these people don't follow routes. Maybe some follow those routes he was saying. Most of them go through the border. Let's call it spade a spade. They go through the border. What they do, they pay their way everywhere. Somebody whom you have not given enough fuel, you have not given him enough money to even take himself to where he will find these drug traffickers, is going to meet them. They are enticing him with millions of naira. How do you fight it? So I have the feeling that, or I have the belief that the government will have to do more in terms of funding to NDLEA, because I want everybody to now look at this scenario. Our children and women, as the case is now, are the ones that are going into this drug addiction more than any other person. Those that bring these drugs in every town, every city in Nigeria, those people are known. They bribe their way. All the security agencies in those places, most of them know these people. Some even tutor them on how to evade arrest or how to do the crime and get away with it. The NDLEA's officer is handicapped. He's just one of so many of these security agencies. He comes, he apprehends a drug trafficker. He takes him to court. Some cases are 10 years old in the courts. he sees this same person he has arrested, a very dangerous person with money and everything to fight him, on the street tomorrow. Tell me how he will now go tomorrow and chase somebody and arrest him and take him to court. In Nigeria, just a country close to ours, when a trafficker is apprehended, within 2 weeks, you find them burning the substance, and that man or woman will have his sentence passed minimum 5 years in the next 3 weeks or 1 month. Which means the officer that did that operation is safe. But when you apprehend a drug trafficker, you do all the needful. He is taken to court. In that state, you have the police, you have the army, you have so many security agencies. I will even want to tell you that some of them hide their substances, have their warehouses inside formations of security agencies. How do you get them? So this is where we are. We have to know this fight is ours altogether. All of us, we have to come together to do this fight. Because NDLEA alone cannot do it. With 30 million naira, when a trafficker ferries 5 cartons of tramadol from Lagos to say Kano, he makes over 30 million naira or 30 million naira from that single transaction. And you are giving the whole country, the whole NDLEA in Nigeria, 30 million naira to operate. How can they operate? How can they defeat these people? So we really need to sit up, and we really need to know that all 90% of the vices happen through these drugs. The kidnappers never go to operate unless they are under the influence of these drugs. Armed robbers don't go for their beats until they are set. They have taken drugs. The Boko Haram, as the chairman have just said, you don't find any camp of theirs without huge amount of drugs kept there. So, if we don't sit up and look at this thing, if the government does not see this fight as a priority, I am surely looking at our doom, because all our 90% or more of our productive youths are dragged into this bad behavior. And if you don't stop the source.
To you, let me take on this, Chairman, following what Danjuma just said. Mr. Chairman, now, from what Danjuma has said, ferrying, moving in, paying their way, let me ask, what monitoring mechanism do you have in place to be checking this? Importers or those ferrying? Let's look at those within the country. You drive through the entire country to the highways, you find checks, NDLEA officials, they are all over the place. Yet we hear all this. So what monitoring mechanism do you have in place to track all this?
Let me just bring you back to reality. It is because of these checks that we'll be able to seize what we have seized. But for these checks, it will have been thoroughfare for everybody. We are not supermen. All right, provided always you remember the staff strength of the agency. You know how anticipated thinly it is across the country. You understand why there will be some porous loopholes. I guess that's why Mr. President saw and said he needed to augment the staff strength of the agency. By his training, he knows once you upgrade the staff strength, it comes with retooling, which is more logistics, more equipment. We think that by the time he's done with what he has set about in motion, the porousness will be reduced to some terrible minimum. But I can say both the Prof and Nigerian have talked about the porous borders, and there are several agencies around there. If I have my 5,000 men in Yaya alone, or Fagi in Kano.
Are you working in silos, or you collaborate with these security agencies?
We do. We share information.
Talked about other security agencies.
Yes,
and your men also work there.
Yes, we do. We get some information from them, and when we want to do some operation, we'll call for backup from them. What is involved here is there is a lot of money involved in drug. The money involved is so much that they have toppled governments in other areas. Closer home, Guinea-Bissau, which was barely able to come out of the scratches of drug barons, because there is so much money in it now that they don't know what to do with it, but they must continue with the drug.
Okay, the other aspect I need to ask you is, we see physical checkpoints of your men and maybe other security agencies you collaborate with. Do you have plans to go digital electronic? Because we feel if you go digital electronic, you'll achieve more, you cover more mileages.
There are only two ways of doing the drug interdiction. I'm not talking about rehabilitation now. In the interdiction, it's either you have boots on the ground or technology, as you're alluding to. For our status now, technology is too expensive because of the contending issues that the government has to allot resources. So boots on the ground is the way I think we have decided to go, because it's the cheaper way for now. And it has one advantage. If you have boots on the ground, we can go to the lower levels of government. We can go to the local government, so that we tackle them at inception before they get to the city centers and get to the airports wanting to travel. So that is where we're thinking now. We start from the local government level.
From what Danjuma also said, are you moved maybe to take a bolder step to maybe to open new grounds regarding your collaboration with other security agencies? Because if he says some of them have their warehouses within the basis of security agencies, are you thinking towards maybe opening a new vista?
That's pretty much a general statement. I'm sure, from my background, if I knew any military formation had any of these things, I could get there through from the top down, and they were more than willing to collaborate with me. And we have done that several times. I have arrested servicemen, both police and the military, and I have not treated them differently. So it's the same scourge. No one is exempt. I tell people there are no bounds, no limits from what the NTA says we should do. So nobody is exempted. It doesn't matter who you are, where you are. We're only limited by our capacity. The more capacity we have, the better we will do.
So what plans do you have towards this direction?
Well, of course, it's a national thing, so we'll go with the national plan. Mr. President said it, augment the strength first, then it will be the equipment and logistics.
How soon are we getting that?
We're already, but for COVID-19, we will have been training the first batch of 5,000. And he has given us in 3 trenches, 5,000, 5,000, 5,000. That has not been done for 27 years.
Okay, I'll come back to you. You just mentioned COVID-19, and I'll take this on Dr. Chinyelu. Dr. Chinyelu, Chairman talked about but for COVID-19. What is your discovery within this period? Because we hear a lot has happened because people were drug-induced within the COVID-19 period because of the lockdown. And if it is true, are we surmounting it? Are we treating it?
I think that we need to consider not just the physical effects of COVID-19, but also the psychological effects. A lot of people have panic, paranoia, anxiety, People are stressed out. You go through the flight, fight, or fight response, which is a physiological cascade within your body. Your blood pressure goes up, your respiratory rate goes up, your heart rate goes up, your muscles become tense, as if a bear or a lion came into the room. And that's what COVID-19 has done to all of us. It's caused the release of large amounts of different chemicals inside our bodies to prepare us to fight or to flee, because it's anxiety provoking. So a lot of people deal with stress. One of the major reasons why people use drugs is to deal with stress, to be able to cope with the daily challenges of life, like some of the other guests have mentioned. So I think we need to also bring to bear the psychological implications of COVID-19 and protective factors to prevent drug abuse. We have to increase resiliency in families, because it's a person that's offering your child a drug. It's a person. It's not just, they're getting it from people, not just drug dealers, but peers in many cases. So one of the protective factors is when you bond with your child in such a way that your child is your friend and can come to you. You have that discussion early enough. Your child could come to you and say, oh, wow, I'm being offered this or that. You have to monitor your children, because what's happening is a lot of people that are addicted, not just the drug dealers, but other people that are addicted, are trying to addict as many people as possible. And so monitoring your child, having bonds with your child, supporting your child in school, giving your child social coping skills, because a lot of people feel shy and inadequate and can only relax and be around other people when they're using drugs. So that means they lack coping skills, social skills. Then drug refusal skills. A lot of people can't say no when people are all around them smoking or using drugs, then they feel, oh, I have to join in, otherwise I'll be ostracized from this group. You have to reinforce what your value system is early on. The thing is, we're waiting on average till the person gets to like 24. By that time, they've had like 10 years of hard drug use, and they're hard addicts. It's different when you catch it, when the person is still a teenager, So we have to start earlier, and we have to address all the risk factors and have a strategy for each and every risk factor. I think one thing that's, I'm coming to understand is the NDLE is grossly underfunded. I think that is something that is coming out of this discussion, and I really hope that those in authority and power will do something about it with the funding for NDLEA.
Before I come to Chairman, let me address, put this question across to you through these tweets. The tweet is coming from Jensen 000. The tweet says, aside from the imports, Nigeria also faces an internal problem with corruption at major local pharmaceutical companies, boosting the illicit supply of codeine-based cough syrup to drug users. How do you react to this?
You see, from my discovery...
Hear me? Okay, if you can, let me take the question again. It's a tweet coming from 00. Aside from the imports, Nigeria also faces an internal problem with corruption at major local pharmaceutical companies, boosting the illicit supply of codeine-based cough syrups to drug users. How do you react to this? Rekpene?
Is that my question? Yeah, very well. Well, I think that's also a very important point that the tweet has mentioned. Corruption is a major problem. It's a big problem in this country, and in fact, unfortunately, it permeates almost every strata of this society. So, with endemic corruption such as we have, the pharmaceutical institutions are not exceptions to the rule at all. Based on what Danjuma said, clearly anyone who is able to procure 1 carton of tramadol from Lagos, for example, from any of the pharmaceutical companies, and takes it to the north, makes almost 3 times, the cost of procurement of that carton of tramadol. And if he's able to bribe his way from the pharmaceutical companies who are also making a kill from it, all the way to wherever he makes, a bigger kill, by, further redistributing it to, those who use them in places in the northeast and north central and elsewhere in the country. He smiles all the way to the bank. So corruption is a big problem. And I think that the institution of government that has direct responsibility for oversight or monitoring this is NAFDAC. NAFDAC must be up and doing in their statutory responsibility of monitoring to be sure that pharmaceutical companies are not hand in gloves with these several drug cartels, local drug barons and their trafficking legs that are almost everywhere around the country. So I think that the issue of corruption is a major problem, but it's not just the pharmaceutical companies. And in terms of them being susceptible to corruption, corruption also affects almost every other institution in this country. And as Colonel Abdallah had said, NDLA does not work in isolation. NDLA works in concert with other security agencies. And I doubt if some of these agencies are shielded or are immune from infiltration by corrupt drug traffickers and their barons. So it's up to us to, and I think that also will take me back to the issue that Colonel Abdallah, the chairman of NDLA, had raised earlier about boots on the ground as part of their operational strategy presently. If you ask me, maybe within the limits of available resources, that can only work for the time being. Otherwise, it's very analog. What we need to do is to go digital, improve upon intelligence, collection, intelligence gathering as a foundation for effective interdiction, and also, improve upon the criminal justice system, so that they'll be able to effectively dispense justice, like Najima had said earlier about, what happens in one of our neighboring countries where the criminal justice system is so effective. Once a suspect drug, trafficker is arrested, investigations are promptly carried out, it's taken to court, and the matter is dispensed with, immediately. And I think that that's, if we, take, similar approach, we'll be able to address the problem of corruption effectively, and then bring the sledgehammer heavily upon the pharmaceutical companies that are, that have become compromised, so that, we can, heave sighs of relief in, the effort to tackle the drug menace.
Let me take the next line of tweets, then we move on to other issues. A few grounds have been covered here, and it is public knowledge that what has been said is true. But quickly, the other tweet from El Farouk Ahmad says, so corruption is our big problem. Even some of our NDLA officers are corrupt. When they seize some of these drugs, still they return it back to our community by selling it to them. Finally, change begins with me policy is important. May God bless Nigeria. How do you react to this, sir? Regarding officers, your officers who have been, I'm sure you have testimonies to this.
Let's latch on to what has just been said in the last speaker about the pervasive nature of corruption.
Okay.
I will be lying if I sit here and tell you that all I have in NDLA are angels. But I can tell you the majority of them are up and doing. We do have black sheep around. And once we catch them, we give them the real treatment they deserve. They are never left in the agency.
Okay. And you have testimony to that effect?
Yes.
Okay. Now, the other tweet says, the major reason we are still lacking behind as a country is because we fail to do the needful, and the youths now resort to drugs to stabilize their minds. Our mindset matters as youths. This is a youth. Now, the last on this segment of tweets is from Usman101. The best way of tackling drug trafficking in Nigeria, drug traffickers and dealers should be arrested and prosecuted according to the law, and the government should provide awareness on the social media on the effect of hard drugs. Is your communication of media unit very proactive or active?
Let me comment on some of the earlier things about reasons people give for this drug abuse. Alhaji Danjuma made mention of something that we have just glossed over. Parenthood. Parenthood is a full-time job. Most of us take it too casually. We don't know what our children are doing. You think you just bring these children to the world and then throw them out to the public. The public should take care of them, or the government should come out for them. I think what our laws should also add, if a parent deliberately abandons his responsibility, he must be made to pay some price.
Okay.
And let me clear when I say boots on the ground. By boots on the ground, I mean that we should build up our information from the grassroots up. And you have to have these boots there to get you the information. Remember I said the cost of technology we cannot afford now because of contending national issues. Okay. But if we can, why not? But then, even if you have the technology, you still need people to do that. We do have media platform that is manned 24 hours for NDLA. What we need to do now is to give out the numbers both for counseling and for reporting of anything you see, particularly this black sheep that deviate. If you, in confidence, no name, just give us the transaction, the time. We know there are people who are on duty at those places.
Okay. Our focus tonight, once again, is tackling drug abuse and illicit drug trafficking. When we return, we'll go to other areas within the ambit of our discussions tonight. We'll take a break.
For now, the best and most efficient way to avoid getting infected is through regular hygienic and sanitary practices, as well as social distancing. As individuals, we remain the greatest weapon to fight this pandemic. By washing our hands regularly with clean water and soap, disinfecting frequently used surfaces and areas, coughing into a tissue or elbow, and strictly adhering to infection prevention control measures in health facilities, we can contain this virus.
Coronavirus is real. Steps to avoid this pandemic. Wash your hands regularly or sanitize your hands. Keep social and physical distancing. Avoid crowded places. Stay at home unless absolutely necessary. Don't touch your eyes, nose, or mouth if your hands are not clean. Avoid the spread of coronavirus. Coronavirus is real.
NTA Tuesday Live, a network issue-oriented innovation talk show.
Thanks for staying tuned. We begin this segment with a report from Maiduguri.
In Borno State, the traumatic decade of Boko Haram insurgency brought about an increase in illicit drugs business and consumption. Hence, the engagement of National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, NDLEA, on sensitization in IDP camps, schools, and other flashpoints to raise awareness on the effect of illicit drugs on the society, in addition to aggressive intelligence-led policing operations to arrest and seize harmful drugs and substances from traffickers, dealers, and consumers. The command in Borno has recorded psychotropic drug seizure this year alone in excess of 10.7 tons, which in financial terms is over ₦1 billion. Sealed houses estimated at 150 million naira, seized a number of vehicles transporting drugs into the state, and arrested 433 persons.
This is still a further testament of the support that the Chairman Chief Executive of the agency has given the command, as well as the Executive Governor of the state.
Government and other stakeholders are committed to achieving good health, security, and justice for all by tackling this threat, as well as ensuring sustainable well-being of the people.
We've been partnering through Joint Task Force and also individually to complement the effort of government. And this effort is yielding results.
Currently, out of the about 550 patients we've admitted in the facility this year so far, 62% had the substance-related disorder that the continuous awareness the facility engages in, and that has actually increased it.
What's the update from Ibadan, Oyo State?
In Oyo State, since January up till today, we've had 66 arrests. We've been able to seize 1,101.395 kilograms of various narcotic drugs and substances. We have had 27 convictions this year. We are following up on information on cannabis farms in the state. We have as young as primary school age getting involved now. So people have to know that it is everybody's business. If we are able to solve the problem as a community, it will lead to peace, security, health, and well-being of the society. So that's the message we pass. We try to pass to people. We go to schools, we go to markets, just to create that awareness for those who don't know to know.
We've constituted drug-free club in over 90 secondary schools in the state. We've been to motor parks, garages, some tertiary institutions to send the message that drugs abuse is a societal menace. When we go out as a body, these are drug regulatory agencies that have their own mandate. So instead of going out individually, we now form the joint team that we move out at once, so that if anybody violates the law establishing each of these agencies, they will be dealt with once and for all.
There are laws. There are sufficient laws in this country, but what is always in problem is how to implement them to the fullest. Go to our criminal act. There's no single item of human activities or human endeavors in life that is not in the criminal act, but it depends on how we utilize it.
Thanks for staying tuned. Before we left, I also come to Dr. Ikeako. Dr. Ikeako, let's bend backwards a bit. We hear so much about crude concoctions as alternative, including smoking of lizard parts and dung, sniffing of glue, petrol, sewage, and urine as inhalants. Or maybe if they don't find the real one, they do this. What brought about this and how can we solve it?
So, we need to strengthen families because chaotic family life is one of the major risk factors for drug use. So, families that are chaotic, where the parents are using drugs, or where there's mental illness in the family, or where there's divorce or discord or separation in the family, the children feel vulnerable. The ammonia that you get from like sniffing a pit latrine, can give you a high, and inhalants, like diesel and other petrochemicals can also give you a high, even though they destroy your central nervous system and destroy your judgment, your insight, your ability to learn, So what's happening is that our kids are, in a situation where they're trying to make sense of the world, and they need to be supported by their parents, by schools, and by the community at large. We need a broad strategy. We need to support our institutions. We need to improve on the education sector. We need money, funding for the organizations that involve themselves in preventing drug trafficking. So these are some ways that we can help protect people from becoming addicted. Most people that use drugs will not be addicted. It's only a certain percentage. I think they have about 3.4 million Nigerians that are actually addicted versus just using drugs for leisure, So when you're addicted, it means that you can no longer control your use. Your use is now compulsive in spite of negative consequences. You're not able to perform your function in school or at home, or recreationally. You now have either psychological or physical symptoms. You use even when it's dangerous, like you drive while you're high, and things of that nature. So I think it's important for us to make a distinction between people that use drugs and people that are actually addicted, which is now a lifelong, chronic, relapsing disease.
Do you think, besides arrests and prosecution, if the NDLA is supported to put in place maybe corrective centers, rehabilitation centers, it might work?
Yeah, I think we need more rehabilitation centers. We definitely don't have enough. And we don't, a lot of drug use is happening at the rural levels, at the local government level, where people just cannot afford, to, go to rehabilitation. And rehabilitation helps. It helps at least 50%. 50% will benefit within the first year. 50% won't, so there is a relatively high relapse rate. So we definitely need more centers that are affordable and available, because the time of intervention is very critical. You want to catch people when they really need the services. So these are things that I think could strengthen the system if we had more rehabilitation centers, at least one per state, if not more than one per state.
To you now, we have heard from the state commanders the support they get from the headquarters of NDLEA and also what they get from the state governments. If this is reinforced, mostly on the part of the state governments at the state level, could this help?
Yes, definitely. I mean, we need to start thinking outside the box. From what this gentleman on my left is saying, the drug dealers are a step ahead of everybody. We're like playing catch up. The collaboration is key, and sharing of information, better knowledge for better results, and so we need to start thinking outside the box. How can we catch up? How can we now be strategic and be a step ahead of the drug dealer? How can we see them coming and have strategies in place, to prevent drugs from getting, on the street?
Question, I meant it for Danjuma. Danjuma, the point I'm making is, if the support the NDLA gets at the national level, we get same quantum of support at the state level. Could it help?
It will be very difficult, because the politicians at state level, most of them use these drugs to entice and get their supporters to work. So instead of helping NDLEA, they will undermine NDLEA. This I'm sure of. One more thing to say is I'm still going back to the home. The doctor here might not be happy with what I'm going to say now. Mothers have a very, very vital role to play. They shield their children from their fathers, not letting them know what their children are up to because they are closer to the children. When the child starts from school, if he starts a behavior of drug, the mother knows first. And some fathers are careless. They feel the whole world, they have businesses to do, they have work to do. They leave these things to their mother, to the mothers. At the end of the day, it gets back to you as the father. So the mothers need to open up, let the fathers know what is happening so that they can join hands and fight this thing, because mostly it starts from that level of this thing, secondary school level.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. Another thing is the biggest culprits in the whole of this issue are the pharmacists. Most of them make it look legal, the business they are doing. Most drugs get through them to the consumers. So somebody who has a very big warehouse, a very big pharmaceutical store, he is selling tramadol to addicts. You see, you will, in every town, people know those pharmacies that sell these things. I will like to call on parents and traditional rulers to please look at this thing very well. Somebody comes, he opens a pharmacy in your own locality, he's selling hard drugs to your children, and you don't care. I can't understand what kind of responsibility that is. A lot of people are hiding and shielding their children from this kind of drug abuse because of stigmatization and other things. But the earlier the better you expose your child and take care of the problem, it will be solved at that time. Because if it gets out of hand, there's nothing you can do about it. The correctional centers, I once had cause to take people to correctional center, the one in Zaria. NDLEA, when I went to that correctional center, I found out that they had nothing. You need a conducive environment to rehabilitate somebody. You don't bring him to an environment that is worse than where he's coming from. How are you rehabilitating him? 30 million naira cannot do the operational duties of NDLEA, not to talk of supporting the correctional centers. And that is where I feel the role of the state governments, if they will do. Because from 1999 to now, the rate of drug abuse skyrocketed to an alarming level because of politics. Some people have SAs in their states that give drugs to their followers. That is his duty. Money is funded, he is funded to do that. So how can our society get rid of this drug abuse when those in authority that are supposed to fight this thing are the ones that are encouraging other people's children to come into it while theirs are in school, abroad, and other places? And good to what is happening, most of them take the children there and the children get abused there too. Because you can't destroy other people's children and think you can be immune from that problem. God will not allow it. So the better we look at the facts and be ready to do the right thing, or we'll continue dipping down into the sea of this drug abuse in Nigeria. So we need to come together, all of us, the security personnel that are at the border there, who will take some money for somebody to ferry the drug out, your child might be the consumer, because you are not always there to be with the child. That drug that passed through you might be the one that will be given to your child. So let's always have that behind our mind. The money you take and think that is, you have made a lot of money, that will be good for you to send your son to school or daughter to school abroad, thinking you have gotten her out of the problem, or him, God will not allow that happen. Because these other children you are allowing drugs to get to are the same as your own children. So let's all put hands together, do the needful to get rid of this drug issue, because NDLEA can never ever do it alone. And the government should know that if government brings just 1% of what they are spending on Boko Haram and put into NDLEA, I think a lot of difference will be made. Recruitment, yeah, I'm not...
This is a similar question, a tweet I put across to Danjuma, but taken differently. It is coming from Dan Uno. It says, the alarming unemployment rate in Nigeria is the major cause of drug abuse on the side of youths. Just like the saying goes, an idle mind is the devil's workshop. If our leaders care so much about the rate of drug abuse in our country, they should focus on engaging these youths. How do you react to this?
As I just said, this person is talking about employment. They are employing them on the negative direction. Instead of engaging them with gainful employments, they engage them into thuggery to fulfill their selfish goals. And for that reason, you find out that most of these children or youths are put into this drug abuse. They end up uselessly doing nothing, and these same people that are encouraging them to go into this drug abuse are nurturing their children, carrying them into their rooms and taking them out of the country, while these ones are left to linger and be destroyed. And that is why I am saying the government should do something. This 30 million naira, I'm still repeating it, cannot do anything, can't do anything to NDLEA. Let something be done, because it is the contributing factor. This drug is the contributing factor to this insurgency and so many of these things. Source of funding, because if they know they can buy a carton at 7 million naira or so from Lagos and ferry it to their place anywhere, sell it at thrice the price, I think nothing will stop them from doing that and paying their way and getting their arms. So let's look at this thing. Let's fund NDLEA like 10,000 personnel. DEA in America, that's what they have, about 10,000 personnel. Their budget is $3 billion per annum. $3 billion. 10,000 personnel. Nigeria, we have 500 personnel, 5,000 personnel with 360 million naira per annum, $1 million. Oh no, at the old exchange rate, not this new exchange rate. The old exchange rate at 1 million naira. It doesn't add up. The government should be ready to fight these drugs trafficking, because it is the biggest menace now in our society. Thank you.
Dr. Ekeazu, this tweet is directed at you specifically. It's coming from, where is the tongue twister here? The question is to Dr. Chinelu. Going by the high rate of drug abuse and the resultant psychiatric mental illness in our society, are there rehabilitation programs to catch this user at early stage before mentally they get out of hand?
Programs, but many of them may not necessarily be affordable. And they're not enough. I mean, considering our population of over 200 million, and we're talking about 14.3 million drug users and 3.4 million addicted individuals within the last year from the 2019 National Drug Survey. So rehabilitation is available, and there's inpatient and outpatient rehabilitation, and it starts with an assessment, a comprehensive assessment. And so, I think for those who may be interested in that's definitely something that is available.
So you just take this tweet to the chairman. It's directed at the chairman. Before I come to Rekpene quickly, the tweet says, Mr. Chairman, despite the counter-narcotic efforts of NDLEA, increasingly large quantities of illicit drugs still pass through the Nigerians. NDLEA chairman should provide modern tactics and training instructions to their officers in order to fight drug abuse and trafficking.
I absolutely agree with what that contributor has said. But if you had listened attentively to what we have been saying, there is a limitation to what you can do with what you have. If we are to go that way, we need to have so much more to be able to do it. But we have elected to go a different route. That of beginning from the local level, the local governments, before we get into where we can deploy the technology. We cannot we do not have the luxury of deploying technology now, I keep saying, in the light of contending other national issues. But I will be glad to have everything I've requested. That will make my job all the more easier. But I am realistic. I think it's a doable thing, the way Mr. President has started it. If I insist we catch them early from the local government, you won't get them in the state capitals. They will certainly not find the way to Abuja Airport, Kano Airport, Akano Ibiam, or Murtala Mohammed International Airport trying to go. We will have discovered them early. This is model. This is novel to Nigeria. Other countries, I don't know how they do that, but we have elected to go this way. Since we all have agreed it is pervasive, why don't you start from the beginning? Instead of trying to fire in the dark, hoping that you catch.
Okay. Rekpene, before we take the next line of reports, I'm throwing this question at you, Rekpene. I watch your site. I see what you do regarding advocacy on to track illicit drug activities in the world and in the country. Now, if I ask you now, what is the way forward to stem all this? What will you say?
I think it's effective interdiction and also working on drug demand reduction, both at the same time. Because if there's no demand, supply will be limited or it won't be there at all. So for me, that's the best way forward. And of course, this will also require all the agencies that have responsibility for doing this, coming together, working in concert and in collaboration with non-profit, non-governmental organizations that are also involved in this effort.
Before we report, this is the latest update from the Nigeria Center for Disease Control on COVID-19. It shows that Nigeria has 452 new cases of COVID-19, bringing the number of confirmed cases to 21,371. Discharge number is 7,338, with 533 fatalities. Lagos is leading with 209 cases, followed by Oyo State with 67 cases. Borno is the least with 1 case. That's the update by the Nigeria Center for Disease Control on COVID-19. Let's take this report as we sustain the conversation from Calabar, yet on drug abuse.
is no longer business as usual for drug users and peddlers in Cross River State, as the state government is committed to fighting the dreaded scourge. Dangerous effects of these hard drugs, which include cocaine, cannabis and others, on users and the society, are better imagined, as they range from physical, social to mental health issues. Some lives have also been lost as resultant effects.
Here in Cross River State, we've been carrying out raids with other security agencies. We've been winning, although presently with COVID-19 pandemic, we have to step down on most of our operations.
The recent crackdown on black spot in the state therefore indicates government's zero tolerance for drug use, with a determination to get rid of suspected dealers.
Drugs have been behind almost all the crimes in Cross River State, so we see it as a primary factor, flaming all the crimes in the state. So we have taken drugs as a primary area of concern. That is why we are going after those who sell this substance and those who take this substance.
Follow with this vox pop from Kwara State.
Need to identify major dealers of this cannabis sativa, because we know that the problem of drug problem that we have here in Kwara State majorly is the availability of cannabis sativa, which is marijuana, tramadol, tablets.
Drug abuse has become an everyday thing, and even some of our past students, you notice them that they are on drugs almost on a daily basis, and one feel very sad about it.
The most measure I believe government can put in place is that we want our NDLA to streamline their actions.
Dr. Ikiazo, let me begin with you on this segment. What is the state of facilities in Nigeria regarding if maybe people need to be rehabilitated drug-wise?
We have government-run facilities, and then you have facilities in the private sector. A lot of times the government-run facilities, they tend to have a waiting list because they're more affordable, so a lot of people who need treatment can't get in immediately, you know, and so that's a problem because they may fall off the grid, you know, and then when you meet them, they may be in a worse state. So we need more government funded programs, you know, addiction treatment programs. So there are programs. I mean, it just varies. It varies from locality to locality. You know, in Abuja, you have some very good addiction treatment centers. But, you know, when you think about a population of 14.3 million, it just doesn't seem adequate to have maybe 10 or 15 facilities that can take 10 to maybe 20 patients each. You know, that's maybe 200,000 for a drug problem of 14.3 million. So there's a real mismatch, you know, and also we have to look at issues like income inequality. We have to end corruption. You know, these are factors that feed into drug addiction. Poverty is a huge one. Boredom is a problem for a lot of people who use drugs. So it's important to engage our young people with extracurricular activities that are productive, sports, social activities that don't involve using drugs. So, you know, we have centers, but they're not enough for the population. You know, and so a lot of people fall through the cracks, unfortunately.
Let's go veer off a bit, but on a very serious note, we hear so much about medical cannabis. And if you walk on the streets, the layman will say, other countries are making so much money, so much revenue from medical cannabis. How come in Nigeria, instead of thinking towards that direction, we burn them off every other day? Are you thinking, what are you doing about it?
I'm going on the side of the law. Let me explain to Nigerians very clearly. Cannabis is scheduled by the UN under the Single Convention of 1968. That convention has enough latitude for countries to do whatever medicinal research they want to do. The drive now and urge to remove cannabis on that list such that people are at liberty to do what they want with cannabis goes afoul of that convention. It is not true what people banter around that there is medicinal cannabis. There is no scientific evidence. If ever anybody has one, let him show it. I had to go to Thailand to verify that they were into this medicinal cannabis. By the time I go to Thailand, I discovered that imported only 100 seedlings. And the two bodies that we research into it are the equivalent of NDLA and NAFDAC in their countries. And there are 3 universities that we're working with them. In addition, they selected only 6 farmers to be able to see whether there is anything in research methods. The cannabis that we have in Nigeria, Nigeria should listen very well, was introduced in this country after World War II from Thailand and Burma. If that cannabis had cannabis oil, Thailand would not be going to Spain to look for this species to bring into their country. There is no truth about it. If anybody has any scientific evidence, let him bring it. I'll ask this question. Okay, assuming that Nigeria is willing to let go its moral stand about on cannabis, those countries asking for liberalization, will they accept that we just farm it and give it to them? Will they take it from us? Can we export it to them? But they won't. Yet they want what's happening in their country to happen in our country. We're a country of 200 million people. You won't find any country with more than 100 million on this side of the fence canvassing for this medical cannabinoid, or whatever they call it. I want a scientific evidence that it works. When the World Health Organization was tasked, it was tasked to come out with scientific evidence to prove that it can be used. But then it confirmed in the report at CND 62, no medical evidence, but that it can be removed from the schedule. Nigeria raised 6 questions opposing that removal. Russia even went further and pointed out, look, nobody asked you to go and discuss scheduling or unscheduling. You are asked to prove medically scientific method that it's beneficial. He didn't prove that. He said there is still some work to be done. Now, once you are saying that it should be removed from the schedule.
Okay, let's move on. Is there anything corporate Nigeria could do to assist NDLA?
Yes, and we have been shouting our hearts out for the 5 years that I've been there.
Because I ask this question, if drug peddling or drug trafficking is everybody's business to check, to stem it, can they help?
That is the way to go. But I've been shouting my heart out for 5 years. Of course, NDLA is not attractive for obvious reasons that you have heard from other contributors. But it's not the first time we have been pleading that people should come in aid of what the federal government is doing. That is what is done in other countries. President Buhari has made the point of saying, look, the Enabling Act is national, but these citizens are indeed local. They are the ones that are consumers of your products. Won't you step in and save them so that they can buy your products yourself? But they don't seem to be listening.
Okay. Let me go to Rekpene now. Rekpene, we have said so much. The abuse, the good side, the bad side of it. In all this, what really is the way forward to have a drug-free society in Nigeria?
Well, I think that it begins with the family, you know. If you take a look, for example, at this year's the theme of the UN Day on drug abuse and illicit drug abuse and illicit drug prevention. The theme is better knowledge for better care. Therefore, I think that the more awareness we can create, so people become conscientized to understand the ill effects or consequences of the abuse of illicit drugs, the better it will be for our entire society, and possibly taking this to the grassroots so that everybody becomes enlisted, in the war, in the fight. That, in my opinion, is, one way to go. The other way to go is, like you asked Colonel Abdallah, is for corporate Nigeria, to, in reflection of their corporate social responsibility, also, support this fight. But even more importantly, we need to, squarely face the interdiction aspect of this by having, statutory agencies responsible for, interdiction, better equipped, their manpower improved upon, better funded, and better trained. Because presently, with 5,000 staff, you can barely do very little, if any at all. I hope that as soon as possible, they'll step up and take it to about 20, as Colonel Abdallah had said that the president has kindly approved. But you also have alluded to the fact, Omini, that the drug problem must be looked upon as everybody's problem, and so we all must have our hands on deck in one concerted efforts, try to fight against it. That's the only way we'll have, a better future, because the rate at which we are going, if we continue like this, and with such minimum efforts as we're investing in it, the next couple of years would be terrible. Almost most of our youth will become crackheads and junkies, and we can't afford to go that way.
Danjuma, if you can hear me clearly, I used to hear sometimes they say the change agent approach works magic. If NDLA adopts the change agent approach, will it work? For instance, I find top-class religious leaders, top-class traditional rulers preaching the message against drug abuse. Will that work?
Certainly it would, but some money would need to come into it. You see, I will like to throw a challenge to the National Assembly. If they are not really beneficiaries of these drug addicts, let them do something about the funding of NDLEA. Let them create a source of funding for them, maybe from the pharmaceutical companies. Their taxes also, there should be a percentage that should go to NDLEA, which removes much of the burden from the government, and they will be well funded to do their job. The National Assembly should take this as a challenge. Let them do it so that we know they are not part of the destruction of our children. And leaders will follow. Because no matter how you preach, when you are preaching and somebody is coming with a bag of naira, it doesn't add up. There's going to be a lot of problem. People will not understand the preaching very well. Let the preaching come, and NDLEA staffers have their own kits and operational materials and are well paid to do the job, so that no drug baron can buy them over. Like I heard Colonel Abdallah saying that, they have bad eggs. Certainly, there's no magic you can use to stop bad eggs from NDLEA. No magic. You have sent somebody out on the field there. You have given him 5,000 naira or 10,000 naira, which you hardly can take out of the operational fund of 30 million naira. He goes out, his tire gets burst on the way, he can't fix it. At the end of the day, it's the drug baron that will help him out. So where do you draw the balance between his being loyal and doing the right thing to NDLEA or allowing the baron to do what he wants to do? So change will be very, very good. Religious leaders will do, and traditional leaders will do good to this thing, but funding is key to all this. You have to have funds to do it. Because in so many households now, as we are speaking, I'm sure a lot of parents are there who have this pain in them that their children are into this thing and they don't know what to do. There are so many. People are just living in denial. They have these problems this problem is in so many homes around the country. So we need the right thing to be done, funding, moral suasions, and the rest of them. But preaching alone cannot bring any change on this issue. And National Assembly, please rise to this occasion. Do something about funding of NDLEA. It is very, very important. It's key. These boys that are groomed to be thugs will end up on you because you will finish your term. You can't be there forever. And you have opponents. One day you'll be defeated. You go and meet those you have groomed to fight you at home. So do something. Let's get rid of these drugs. Let's do clean politics and move forward. These children that are being destroyed are those that can innovate aeroplanes and other things for us. The society, the country called Nigeria, if we don't do anything about these drugs, we are destroying the future of this country. Because all those that are supposed to do something are the ones that are now drifting into these drugs and in large numbers. In schools, this is the norms. We had somebody reporting from Edo or somewhere, a teacher. Children go into the school at times with Fanta, drinks, putting drugs in them and going into the class with them. The teacher is teaching while they are sipping their drink. You will be thinking they are taking ordinary this thing. No, they are getting high in the class. You don't have anything to test what they are taking. There's nothing you can do about them because the parents are more powerful than the school at times. Those that are doing the best to nurture their children to be good people, go and mix up with these children of these people that don't care about the upbringing of their children. And that is how the society is now mixing up and problems are coming up. So please, let's get this thing done so that we can get the future of Nigeria back to life. That's my take about this change.
Mr. Dr. Ikiako, sorry please. We hear that maybe, well, just an assumption that if you rehabilitate 15 drug addicts and they come out from rehab, the tendency is that out of the 15, about 12 or 13 will return back. Only 2 will escape, will stay off it. What would have been responsible? Is it a relapse or what?
Relapsing disease, and what you have is changes in the structure and function of your brain, in the areas of your brain that have to do with reward and motivation and learning and memory, and so the powerful imprint that chemical, which is the drug, makes on the brain. What you have is neuronal loss. You have billions of neurons in the brain, and at the point where the neurons communicate with each other, which is called the synapse, is destroyed. And so there's poor judgment, there's impulsivity, there's difficulty learning, and all kinds of psychological manifestations. So it's the chemical that changes the structure of the brain so that if you don't take it, you remember how it was when you took it the first time. And if you don't take it, you don't feel that you can be okay. You either have severe withdrawals or you want to repeat that pleasure that you got when you took it the first time. So you end up taking it again and again and again so that you can experience the high. I'm thinking that perhaps if we had some sort of certification program that was mandated for parents, parental certification, and also for kids, where in schools, where they have to take a certain number of credit hours of drug education, at that early level from the age of 12 when they're being exposed to drugs, and so maybe if you had a program like that, that could be renewed every year or every 2 years, maybe that might be a way of sensitizing the public in general about the negative consequences of using drugs. So the point is, it's a chronic relapsing disease. It's like diabetes, saying that I'm cured of diabetes or that I'm cured of hypertension. The relapse rate is 40 to 60%, which it is for many of these other chronic illnesses, including asthma. And that's because of the permanent damage that it does to your brain. Even after you stop using, that damage continues in many cases for a very long time.
As much as some challenges have been identified by the guests in the studio tonight, are you saying that there's no way forward to break new grounds in terms of checkmating drug abuse in Nigeria by the NDLEA?
Absolutely not. I have considered that there's a lot to be done with NDLA in the future, but the NDLA as is will need to be upgraded, retooled and re-equipped. Let me say it for the 15th time, and I think the person who initiated this idea of restocking in terms of manpower understands that it comes with retooling, with re-equipping, and with the necessary logistics. There is a balance used in the military. Troops to task and task to troops. Okay. They are the same two words, but the way you arrange them makes a difference. When NDLA was created, a body of troops, so to say, was created. Because only after that body was created that they started looking for tasks for them. The ideal situation is to delineate the tasks. Then you know exactly, I need X number of people. I need that kind of equipment. I need this type of vehicle. And this is what I need for logistics to support them. That's what ought to have been done. But it wasn't done. That's why NDLA kept suffering for 27 years. The numbers were given, but the tasks were created as they went along. There is an amorphous
sport, and more on your smartphone and tablets and stay connected. It's pretty easy. Simply download NTA News app from your Google Play Store and you're good to go. NTA News mobile app, your access to real-time information.
In this time of despair, Our country, Nigeria, needs us now more than ever. We stand a chance to save our great country, Nigeria. A chance to rise up from this pandemic stronger and better. What will be the gain if we do not learn from other countries and observe the lockdown to stop the further spread of the virus? If we loosen our guards and allow this
Any of the research institutes in the country to attempt one?
They don't need to be challenged. It's sellable in the whole market. Let them do it. People will buy. NDA will buy.
Okay, let me allow just a sentence. What word of hope do you give to Nigerians as we wrap up?
Well, I think that if we stay our political will and we get everybody to become involved in the endeavor to tackle the menace of drug abuse and illicit trafficking effectively, then we would, there will be hope, for our future. Otherwise, I think there will be very little hope, at the rate at which young people are taken to the drug culture all over this country, unfortunately. So the appeal, therefore, is for everybody to come on board, become involved. The appeal, therefore, also is to work hard to conscientize, Nigerians across board, and I hope that the individuals that are involved in the cartels or their agents out in the field that are involved in these activities would also listen to the appeal to fear God, knowing that they too are potential victims, directly or indirectly. If their children don't become victims, the users of these drugs in the course of criminal activities can also target them. And if they are conscious of this fact, then it would, it will help that they refrain from, continuing to indulge in these activities, hoping that their consciences are not so severely seared. That would be on the way forward in terms of...
President, African Council on Narcotics, it was nice having you on Tuesday Live tonight. Thanks for being on the program. Well, let me go to Dr. Ikeako for also to give us a last thought on this program. Just one sentence, please.
If you are addicted, or if you want to know whether you're addicted, please come in for an assessment so that you can get treatment. Treatment works. And, you may have options of outpatient versus inpatient rehabilitation, behavioral therapies, which include motivational enhancement therapy, 12-step therapy, and other cognitive behavioral therapies and other therapies. They're available. Also, there are medications that can help you with craving, so that if you want to use, you won't feel like using the drug again. So these are also available for some substances. We can help you manage your withdrawal as well. If you have very severe withdrawal, there's medication that we can give you to help you with that and help you to engage a new life with new possibilities. So help is available. Just reach out and come in for an assessment.
Just before I take on Danjuma, we do apologize for the slight loss of signals in the course of the program just a few minutes ago. We do apologize for that. Danjuma, your last word.
Okay. I don't think unemployment is the reason for drug addiction. This government have put so many things in place, like the agriculture, which is the real thing now about making money. Our youths should look at that option, because so much funds have been put into agriculture through the Ankoboro and other programs. Let them cash on that and go and do something. Don't wait for government employment. It frustrates because 200 million Nigerians, the job opportunity there in government is so slim. So try to be gainfully employed through agriculture. I think it has space for everybody.
Lu Ada Ikako, it was nice having you on the program tonight. And also Danjuma Ibrahim. Thanks so much for being on Tuesday Live tonight. Back to the studio. Chairman, just your last word to Nigerians as a reassurance.
Reassurance or sound, a note of warning. Which one would you rather have?
Any of the two.
All right. I like to say, I like Nigerians for the fact that we are sleeping on a very slippery ground towards a precipice. Every Nigerian should be mindful of that. Like we said, it's a collective effort that belongs to every Nigerian. If we don't arrest this descent, maybe we will survive, because I'm an old man, but I can tell you, there won't be a Nigeria as we know it if we do nothing about it.
Thank you so much, Chairman. That's it on Tuesday Live tonight. Thanks so much for your calls and also your tweets. It was nice having your time with us. Good night.